in the late 80s. By coincidence, bam, 4 times I was thrown out of my bed at dawn from Whittier Narrows, Sierra Madre, Northridge. By the time Northridge in the 90 came around, when I dusted myself off, it became apparent to me that's. I look back at the history of the 20th century in Los Angeles, and lo and behold, there is a pattern. It's pretty obvious. CBS News has been all over this, and quite a number of Popular Science, quite a number of very respected news fonts have gone over the evidence. For your listeners, in a nutshell, here's the evidence that I'm trying to place on the governor's desk so that the California Earthquake Prediction Evaluation Council can weigh it. Every single human being who died in Los Angeles in the 20th century died at dawn or at dusk in an earthquake. All the seismic deaths that happened 70 miles within the city center of Los Angeles, every single one of them at dawn and at dusk. And 2/3 of those great quakes, on top of showing a solar influence, 2/3 of them, if that's not eyebrow-raising enough, took place within hours of the newer full moon phase. So
to me, David, that's a no-brainer if facts are facts.
It is a no-brainer. That's what, well, I'll give you Popular Science's quote. They said, this is simple but brilliant observation. You can throw the brilliant out. I'm not a brilliant guy. I'm just a guy with eyeballs. This is simple observation, impossible to dismiss as coincidence. That's Popular Science. So I'm hoping that your listeners, if they hear a cogent argument being made, I'm not expecting people to, crown me the seismic messiah or anything, but I'm asking for a fair, what all Americans should lean toward, a fair hearing before the appropriate body of experts. So if every time I speak on the air, I ask for people to go to the website and leave a quick note with the governor of California so they could express their opinion on this matter, that he might convene that panel.
All right, now, I want to understand this. You're saying that every major quake in Los Angeles
that killed people. Big enough to have killed people, all the killer quakes.
Yes, between 1930s and the mid-1990s.
1933, Long Beach to Northridge, 1994. We haven't had one in 20 years, and you're right.
Can you give us some of the specific examples so that jogs people's memories of these quakes?
Long Beach, 1933, 6.9 killed 120 people. Gorman, the largest earthquake that took place in the continental United States, 1952 in July, killed 12 people. Thank God it wasn't closer to Los Angeles. It was a little bit of an outlier, about 70 miles away. Sylmar, everybody remembers that one. That killed 60 or 70 people. Again, 6 a.m. on the dot. The Sierra Madre quake killed a handful of people. Whittier Narrows, Northridge, of course, that everybody remembers. These quakes, some of them, it's astounding. Gorman and Northridge and Landers, all three, Landers also one of the biggest earthquakes ever to have taken place in the continental United States, all three within, I think, a 2 or 3 minute window and separated by decades. The largest earthquake ever to have taken place in the North American continent in the history of the world, the great quake that destroyed Anchorage, 47 minutes outside of the parameters discussed just now with you. So there's compelling evidence.
David, what's the time frame before and after dusk and dawn?
What I've published and what the evidence shows, there are 3-hour symmetrical windows, 4:45 to 7:55 a.m. and or p.m. So if we're going to do the scientific theories here, part of the scientific method is you have to have prediction and observation. So your listeners, what I'm saying quite plainly is not that there's going to be an earthquake, but these are two of the highest of the 14 higher probability windows for the year of 2014, 4:45 to 7:55 a.m. and or p.m. on July 12 or September 9. Those are two of the highest ones.
All right. Now, what is happening at this time? What's causing these windows to be prone to an earthquake?
Just as simple as and as old-fashioned and rock-solid as Isaac Newton's physics. It's classical celestial mechanics, solar and lunar gravitational tides, the clockwork movement of the universe as the Earth and the Moon and the Sun do their dance. There are angular positions where they line they line up in syzygy, where the solar and lunar tides, stupendous powers, by the way, at dawn and at dusk during new and full moons, pull in the same direction. They are combined. They are conjoined. They're pulling in tandem. And if there is a fault line ready to go, nobody knows this, of course, without ground-based indicators. But what I'm saying is, if there is a fault line at risk, this would be an excellent time, as the straw on the camel's back would tell you, for the last possible nudge to nudge it into action if it's ready to go.
All right, help us. You're a former science teacher, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Help us understand why these conjoined lunar and solar gravitational tides would trigger a quake along a fault line that is, vulnerable at that particular moment.
Well, a quick primer on the tides, then, just to give you an idea. The stupendous geysers on Enceladus that spew ices and liquids 8 kilometers high. They're powered by the Saturnian tides. They're the largest, most ferocious volcanoes in the solar system on Io. We're talking about volcanic rings the size of Germany, by the way, on Io. Those are powered by the Jovian tides. And on Earth, Earth is not pushed off the stage of these incredible feats. Imagine picking up the Pacific Ocean and yanking it to the other side of the Earth daily. That's the kind of muscle that these gravitational solar and lunar tides wield. And when the fractured fault lines of the Earth's surface are not immune to these, they bulge the planet, they manhandle the Earth, and it's enough to, you can imagine a boiled egg that is cracked. If you push your fingers on either side and your thumb and just squeeze it, you can pretty much guess where that egg is going to break, and it's going to be on those fractures. So
it's the force of the ocean moving back and forth under the pressure of
part of that is true. Yeah, it's the part of the weight of the oceans moving to these pressure points, but to make sure your listeners understand, these tides, they actually bulge the Earth itself. The solid Earth is squeezed and stretched and bulged by these tides in such a way that it's not just the weight of the oceans, but it's literally the Earth itself being pulled like taffy on these leverage points, one on the far side of the Pacific, the other around the Mid-Atlantic Rift at dawn and at dusk, in order to leverage the Pacific and the North American plates apart, to change the frictional coefficient. It's gravitational tides are a little tricky to understand. They take place in any place where two large bodies orbit one another, and it's the orbital paths. It's very difficult to get perfect circular orbits. And in order to force these large planets and moons into these orbital paths that don't quite fit, they manhandle the planets. And our Earth is manhandled by the solar tides and the lunar tides. And at these times and dates, like July 12 and September 9, it's going to be at a maximum, because not only will they be aligned properly, but there'll be a perigee event, meaning that the moon, it wanders a little bit closer in and out on its path around the Earth, and it's going to be about 10% closer in perigee, which means its gravitational tidal effect is going to be 25% stronger, because it's not a one-to-one correspondence. It's exponential.
So this upcoming time window, July 12th and September 9th.
Yes, those are perigee events also.
So the tide force is actually going to be stronger for this one.
Oh, absolutely. Without a doubt. Yes, 25% stronger.
Have you studied quake histories in other parts of the world?
People ask that a lot, and I have so much. I'm not ditching your question. This is it's so much on my plate. Can you imagine trying to I'm swimming upstream just on this, and I'm just one fallible human attempting to attack a really large problem. These tidal triggers. There's a 170-year. I am educated enough to answer this much. There's a 170-year-long peer-reviewed history of seismologists and physicists all over the world in every language connecting tides and earthquakes over 170 years in the most prestigious institutions and peer-reviewed journals known to man. Now, that is a worldwide average, and science finally, with some arm wrestling over the last 20 years on the air, they've been able to, they've confessed that yes, these tidal triggers, they do exist, but they are slight. They are slight. The problem is, It's taken 170 years to get them to say that much, and that's the first problem. The second problem is I'm not talking about the worldwide averages. I'm talking about the West Coast, and from what I see, there's another little there's a quirk of geography that would having to do with the way the plates are aligned and the way the San Andreas and Cascadia run almost north and south. There's evidence that due to some quirks of geography, the slight connection between tides and earthquakes, that is the worldwide average, may have nothing to do with what's going on the West Coast. In other words, the West Coast might be the most susceptible to tidal triggering of earthquakes by tides as per compared to any other seismically active region of the Earth.
All right, that was my next question. Is it possible that the American West Coast is more vulnerable than other parts of the world?
Yes, and the answer is simple, yes. And the empirical evidence screams it, and there's a reason for it. If you were to look at a map, and if your listeners would be, if your listeners want to go to my website, I'm at earthquakepredictors.com. There's the San Diego Journal of History just did a fantastic peer-reviewed, refereed at the University of San Diego, 10-page article on this matter, and they addressed it to the governor of California. And by the way, the San Diego Journal of History, they're no fly-by-night organization. They're one of the oldest scholarly journals on the West Coast. It's the oldest thing published on paper in San Diego County, excepting the Union Tribune. So you can click on that for free. The maps are there, the data is there, the charts are there, all the earthquakes are there. This is the document that I want to place on the governor's desk and ask for a fair hearing.
All right. Now, let's... I've got about 6 minutes remaining. Let's zero in. You're saying the next window of opportunity for an earthquake on the West Coast of the United States would be the date of July 12th and September 9th, not July 12th through September 9th, but July 12th and September 9th, between the hours of 4:45 a.m. to 7:55 a.m. and also 4:45 p.m. to 7:55 p.m. Is that correct?
That is correct. Two separate dates, July 12 at dawn, and two separate times, not the whole day of July 12, dawn of July 12, dusk of July 12, dawn of September 9, dusk of September 9, and when I say dawn or dusk, I mean 4:45 to 7:55 a.m. and or p.m. That's pretty specific. And as far as, let me even be more specific insofar as the locale. I'm not talking about 99% of the face of the Earth. I'm talking about the thin longitudinal swath that would run, the 1% of the surface of the Earth that would run between San Diego and Vancouver, the thin longitudinal swath along the 118th or the 119th meridian west.
And if there is an earthquake, a major quake that kills people on either one of those days, it's because the fault line is on a hair trigger, and the gravitational pull is going to be all it takes to move this these plates. In other words, you're not predicting. There's definitely going to be an earth. There's not going to be an earthquake on those days. That's not a prediction. You're saying that if there is a plate that is vulnerable to a earthquake, there is a high probability that there will be a quake on the West Coast on one of those days.
That gravitational storm, just like the way you described it is perfect, that would be the trigger. If nobody knows if there's an ancillary fault line that has been building pressure up for the last century or the last decade and it's ready to burst, my opinion is that they never get to take place on a natural timetable because these gravitational storms keep breaking over them. Just like nobody can predict a forest fire, but if you've got a particular tract of forest that has been severely tested by a drought for a decade, good chance you might find some problems there in the near future, huh? That's my point. And